Okay, looks like we're live. Good afternoon, YouTube. Doing another reaction video today, and this is by looks like Ben's Watch Club. I've done one other video by this gentleman before, and this one here is his reviewing of a Citizen. He calls it the Grand Seiko Killer, the Zenshin Forza review. And this is again by Citizen. I have one Citizen watch in my collection, so it's a, I think that with a lot of affordable brands, there is different, like with Invicta, there's a lot of different quality levels. Really, it's two different quality levels, to be honest with you. Between Invicta, we have the good quality, and then we have kind of the entry-level quality. And I always say go with the entry-level, or go with the good quality, like your reserve-level pieces. But you have to give every watch a fair shake, because there isn't really any real set guideline. And Aragon does the same thing, but I've noticed lately, Aragon, all their watches coming out are on that. Like, if you were to look at the one of the women's Aragon watches, the Angel watch, the quality of that is not on par with, like, a Millipede, right? So you just have to kind of understand that about affordable watch companies. And I don't know if Seiko or Citizen's the same thing, but I assume they might have kind of your really entry-level ones, and then you have your, like, in Bulova does the same thing. Like the Bulova watch I got two Bulovas, the Precisionist, and then I have the what is the other one? The Octava with the black Swarovski crystals. Super cool watches, but the price point's not really too far off between the two of them, but I feel like the Precisionist is just a little bit of a cut above, So, I don't know, just kind of keep that in mind. So this one here, again, Grand Seiko Killer. I don't know. Let's see what Ben has to say about this watch. Again, I have one Citizen watch, so I have an idea of what kind of quality you get, and I do feel like with Citizen, the quality is probably across the board. Like, I don't think they necessarily do what Invicta does. I could be wrong, but anyway, let's begin the video, and as you pop into the chat, I'm going to see if I can see the participant list. Hopefully this is streaming now. Let me just double check a few things. You folks know every time I get started on these things, I never really know if everything's working properly here, but alright, so we'll leave it on participant list, and I'll do the best to try to do this here. I just don't understand the streaming software. Sometimes we'll have the chat pop up. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but you guys can see it on YouTube. So let's just begin, and as you come into the chat, if you pop in here after the show is over, then of course drop a comment. If you pop on here while it's running, absolutely, I will respond to questions and comments, and I'll, last time we had one of these, we got a pretty good turnout. So, here we go, folks.
Citizen watches have never been my favourite. Just 3 years ago, when I did my full review of the brand, I found they were well constructed with exciting technologies and extensive history at reasonable prices. I could see why they'd accrued a sizable fanbase. Nevertheless, I also found some big downsides, including mismatched bracelets with inadequate adjustment systems, or
I don't know. Okay, so first off, he's saying he found some downsides. He's already starting to down-talk Citizen. I can only imagine he's not in collaboration with Citizen at all, or recommending their watches to even make that statement. That's kind of what I noticed with a lot of YouTubers reviewing watches. So, I don't really agree with his assessment of adjustment. Like, this looks like any other watch. I don't see how this is any different than any other watch. You remove a link, and it probably has micro adjustments. So I'm just not sure where he's coming from already, but maybe he'll explain that.
Awkward lug widths, which restricted strap options, minor QC issues, and a
minor QC issues can happen with any brand. Remember, these are affordable watches. It's just odd to me sometimes these guys, they will accept the minor QC control issues that you get with even a Rolex. Like, we've seen a lot of guys reviewing Rolex and their magnification and seeing things that are minor, and then these are minor things. Like, I just don't understand why they just give certain brands a free pass. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Penchant for exclusively large sizing. It was ready.
That's subjective. Large sizing. I mean, these are pretty small watches. I mean, or normal size watches. Normal size watches are anything from like 40 to like 45. I don't call these large, but it is subjective.
To see a watch under 41mm. Perhaps the biggest hurdle though was the styling. I know it's each to their own, but 99% of the Citizen catalogue sent me to sleep quicker than a vat of wine followed by a right hook from Mike Tyson.
Dude, I just don't understand, like, when people, like, I just don't understand how guys like this can, and it is subjective, right? Not everybody's going to like everything, right? I don't like every watch out there. But if you can look at some of the watches this guy has given, like, a good review to, And then say that these Citizen watches make you fall asleep. To me, it's just nonsense. Like, how could you, like, so this guy is known for reviewing a lot of extremely conservative, boring watches. Again, it is subjective, but it's like, how do these watches put you to sleep? When I think of, like, brands like Citizen, I think they do some really innovative stuff, so I just don't think they're a boring watch brand at all, but...
Fast forward to today, and I've bought 3 of them. Yes, 3 Citizen watches, and that's because nowadays, Citizens fit. They've had a string of hits, including some good-looking new Pro Masters, the quirky Bullhead reissues, and then the highly popular Tsuyosa models.
I mean, that's pretty basic watch.
What really set the tone, though, was the sub-seconds version of the Tsuyosa, which came soon after with a beautiful concentric dial texture that made it look even better. At that point, I was like, okay, Citizen, now you have my attention. The Tsuyosa...
Oh, well, how worthy.
It still doesn't fit me, but I like where you're going with this. What's next? Then this popped up on my feed. And again, and again, and again. It's the new Forza Automatic, also named the Zenshin in some regions. And see...
So that's a good looking watch. I mean, I think that's, I think it's kind of funny. Again, guys like this will straight up like cut down brands for making homage watches or copies, but yet if they see one they like, they make excuses. To me, this is like a Royal Oak. I'm not going to say homage because it's got its own bracelet. Like, they're not really making it one-to-one, but, I mean, to me, that shape reminds me of a Royal Oak, but I think this is a nice-looking watch for sure. I love the blue color on this.
Seemingly every watch Instagrammer and YouTuber has covered this in some form or another. Undoubtedly, this is the most hyped Citizen I've ever seen. I've seen it called a luxury watch killer, a cheaper Grand Seiko, and basically just the...
So again, with these titles, like, I feel like all these YouTubers just go around, like, trying to steal titles from everybody and just trying to, like, you know, what you didn't hear. Like, a real classic one with YouTubers is, like, what they're not telling you about product X. The truth about. It's like these, like, kind of, like, titles that, I guess it works, but they all go around just, like, kind of copying each other's content. Like, I don't know.
The best value watch ever made. And while you could chalk this up solely to clickbait, at a glance, such comparisons somehow seem plausible for once. You see, the Forza seem to have another god-tier dial for a budget watch. What's more, unlike the Tsuyosa, this watch wasn't made of stainless steel. Instead, it shipped with a far more advanced super titanium case.
Ooh, super tight. I mean, come on now. Like, titanium, I just don't understand when guys like this, they just, like, they take these little different, like, features, right? Or like, I don't know, you know, you have stainless steel, titanium, 904 stainless steel, gold, you know, right? You have all these different materials used in watches. Titanium is not anything like super unique. It's definitely more lightweight. I'm not really a huge fan of titanium, although it's, you know, if you are a person who really prefers a watch to be very lightweight, it's a good option for you, but it's not more advanced. It's just, I mean, yes, I guess it is a stronger alloy, but again, all these things aren't really necessary. The only advantage to titanium is that it's going to be a lot, you'll notice on your wrist. The watch will feel really tinny, honestly. And for me, that's why I'm not really a huge fan, although it is an absolute awesome alloy, but it's not like it's, I don't know, just the way he words it, it's not going to make any real world difference to you wearing a watch, other than the way...
I had to take a look at it. So I headed online to buy it, and I was a little stopped in my tracks. You see, when I searched for Citizen Forza, I was also met with 2 other watches that no one seemed to have covered. A regular 3-hander and a chronograph, both of which shared the same elaborate dial texture, but were...
So I don't really understand, like, you were stopped in your tracks. Like, I mean, this guy's, like, overly dramatic. Like, okay, so you went to a website and you found different variations of the watch. Like, I just don't see how it's going to, like, whoa, stop a person in their tracks, you know? I mean, lots of brands make certain models. Sometimes they'll make them in, you know, standard quartz and an automatic, and then maybe a chronograph. So this is just like, I just feel like he's just being overly dramatic.
Were instead powered by Citizen's famous EcoDrive solar technology. I couldn't help but feel curious. I love those in the cart too. After all, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. And I'm glad I did, because I actually would have missed something. Something I think most reviewers have missed. Actually, a couple of things. Either way, I'll run you through each of them, the pros and cons, how they compare, and
I mean, this is the exact same watch, so either you know, there's not really going to be many pros, and if you could find pros and cons to either of these, like, it's going to be the same. Maybe that's what he means, but these are the exact same watch, just different movement, so.
I'll even scratch one of them to see if the super titanium coating is as good as they claim. That's called foreshadowing, folks.
I mean, he's going to scratch it with a scratch kit. Like, it's obviously going to scratch. You can scratch any alloy, so it has nothing to do with if it's as good as it claims.
Something extremely exciting to share with you first. It's a special project that I've kind of been working on behind the scenes to address a pet peeve that I've got with the watch industry. It's called In the Loop, and the problem is all too familiar. The watch news outlets only tend to cover super expensive luxury watches. You never hear about the more affordable stuff, the stuff that you and I can actually afford without getting beheaded by our partners.
I can't believe you said that. So I'm glad he's at least being really honest about it. That his statement was watches we can actually afford without being beheaded by our partners. So obviously maybe there's some kind of like non-disclosure. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but obviously these guys don't recommend specific brands, or they can't be honest about it, or they choose not to be honest about it because it's going to upset their sponsors, the people that are really paying them. And so to me, I find that this is completely biased. Naturally, there could always be a little bit of, some folks will say that I'm biased, and I do feel like, yes, if you were getting watches from a company like I do with Dartmouth, right, and many other brands I've received products, but I'm always going to give you guys like the 100% honest truth. And the thing is, the brands that reach out to me, I've never had a brand say you could only say nice things. I feel like that's just like a little like seed of doubt a lot of YouTubers plant, like that companies expect you just to say good things about their products. I've never had a company say, hey, you're only allowed to say good things, like, ever. Except there was one cologne. I'm not going to mention his name, but what a scumbag. One cologne company, we had an agreement for him to send me full bottles of cologne. Like, it was just a handshake agreement, like, through email, no big deal. But then when it came down to it, he backed out, right? So he sent me these little tiny samples. So, like, I kind of made this parody about it, and he got super pissed about it. And so that was, again, a clear case. Tried to get the videos taken off. A clear case like that, some companies, I guess, don't, like, I find it's like smaller companies maybe don't want you to say like anything honest about their products, and have it only be positive. But I've never really, other than that one instance, had that happen. So, generally, if a company ever reached out to me and said, hey, you can only say good things, I'd be like, well, I'm probably not the reviewer for you. I do mainly say good things about products because most products coming out are great, and I'm not like overly critical. Like, I'm not going to put it under a macro lens and like really try to find a little nick or something. Like, I just don't, you get so much great quality for money nowadays. I just don't see the point in being, overly critical like that. But again, to each their own when it comes to reviewing products. But it's interesting he said that, because that just kind of shows you kind of where he's coming from. That he even mentions it because it is a concern where I don't give a shit. Like, I'll say what I want about a product. But I think that's untrue too, because I don't ever like follow suit with what YouTubers are reviewing. Whatever I get, I'm going to share it, and I'm going to give you guys an honest assessment. And that's kind of what I find annoying about a lot of YouTubers. They'll only give like good reviews to, in this case, watches that they're affiliated with somehow, have an agreement with, or that they like, and everything else they just kind of nitpick and talk shit about. So that just kind of shows you where he's coming from.
More and more, great watches are just slipping completely under the radar because it's not as profitable to cover them. So no.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, it's not as profitable to cover. So I don't think they're slipping under the radar. Everybody can Google anything you want, find a lot of micro brands out there. But it is unfortunate, and guys like this are to blame why that's happening, because all the big-time YouTubers, it's more profitable. It's definitely, you get more views if you mention the word Rolex on a watch, right? It's just people trying to, I don't know, it's just a super popular brand. And you'll get a lot of guys reviewing that. So all these YouTubers tend to follow suit with what is popular. They look and say, oh, this Rolex is popular, I'm going to review that, because they're always chasing views and not necessarily sharing good information. So and the problem with YouTube is that these bigger channels definitely have a lot more pull. So the larger your channel, if you're reviewing, Rolex watches, you've managed to grow your channel, not just because of that, but you've had some luck, you've had some good effort, you make good quality content, right? And you have a huge channel. It doesn't matter what watch brand you put up or what review, your video is going to get more views. It's pushed out to more people, right? And so that's unfortunate, because if you have guys like this who want to bash a brand unfairly, it's more people are going to see it. So it's kind of the blame of YouTube and the algorithm sometimes on why you can't find these watches. So I always recommend, if you're gonna look for a review on a product, in this case a watch, try to be specific as you can. Like, in this case, this watch is going to talk about Zenshin Forza review. But again, if a lot of people are reviewing that, it may be hard to find. If you have a favorite YouTuber, like if it was me, type in Zenshin Forza review Phatkat collections and kind of narrow it down, and that might help you into finding some of those positive views or reviews on these different brands that you were interested in.
Nobody knows they even exist, and that's where In the Loop comes in. Each week I trawl through all the notable watch brands' websites, identify all the new releases from these brands, and cherry pick the best and most interesting models. Every Thursday,
cherry pick the best. I mean, that's is based on his taste, of course.
I then email them to you in a fun, bite-sized format.
So he's pitching his website right now, so just keep that in mind.
Along with my thoughts on each new
Seiko.
release, together with a bunch of extra goodies just
Orient, same brands. Like these are not, these brands that I'm seeing right now are not brands that are like, you're going to be surprised to find. They're all over the place. So I feel like this is, I don't know, just to kind of push you more towards probably some affiliate
thrown in there.
here.
For the last 3 issues, we've been the only outlet on the planet covering some of these watches. So if you want the latest affordable watch news in one quick, convenient location, you should sign up for free to In the Loop. We've had some
I mean, yeah, that's great, but I don't really think he's going to have a lot of micro brands. What I saw in that little preview was 3 well-known, already established brands that everybody knows about. So
some really fantastic feedback on it already, so I'm really pleased to announce it publicly, and thanks for all the kind messages too. Head to the link in the description and sign up if you want to stay in the loop. I'll see you on Thursday. Okay, of course, we're going to start off with the big hitter. This is the Forza Automatic, or Zenshin Automatic. The code name for this particular color is the NJ080-80M. It's the light blue version, which seems to be the most popular from what I've seen online. It typically retails for a shade under 500 quid or $500 US, but it can be had for a chunk.
It's a lot, $500, but I mean, you pay a little bit more for Citizen. I feel like Citizen's kind of coming in at, I don't really think that Citizen's really necessarily, I guess they're kind of affordable. $500 for a watch is a lot for a lot of people, right? So I think really the sweet spot for affordable watches is like $200 to $300. I'm going to already kind of make a judgment call here. I don't think there's anything on this watch that puts this watch worth $500. Although, if you really like it, then that's, if you're looking for a brand that you're, I don't know, Citizen's a pretty well-respected brand, absolutely. But I don't think you're not going to get any quality difference between Citizen and like a $98 Pro Diver on this, or an Aragon watch. So just kind of keep that in mind. Give me 1 second. I just want to update something here. I can put my keyword on here. There we go. And sorry folks, just bear with me 1 second here. Kind of growing pains with this. It's just kind of hard. I learn as I go doing this, so it's like live when you're trying to mess with it. I just want to see if this will work here. See if I can change the thumbnail here. I think that'll work. All right, so, all right, back to it here.
Chunk less from grey market sites. I'll affiliate link it as well as the other 2 in the video description in case.
Hey, nothing wrong with the affiliate links. I do them too, absolutely. Like, this is a business, but it's like, I do feel like a lot of these guys are starting to kind of see the light, I think. And I think that, in the beginning when guys first start reviewing, like, perfect example of like it's Constipated, right? We've talked about him in the past and just what a watch snob he is. It was always about like Seiko and Rolex. And I think that as time goes on, like as affiliates start to reach out or brands start to reach out, people have to understand, like when you're doing a video, it's an opportunity to sell a product to somebody, right? So when I do a video, whether it's on a Nubeo or an RGMT or an Invicta, like after the review, if you find value in the video, of course, like click the link and buy it through the affiliate link. So I'm not faulting that, but I feel like you're going to see a lot of these watch reviewers, their tune is going to change because you have to be pretty well off to have multiple Rolex watches to review. And so guys like this, he has a big channel, but I don't think it's not going to be, we all have bills and mortgages and some people have rent, and so like when you're making your YouTube money and your ad revenue money, a lot of it's going to, for me, I save a lot, but you're always going to buy things, to make content. But if you don't have a brand affiliation that's sending you watches to make content, then you kind of have to buy things you like or borrow them or just, you're a little bit stuck. So people have to kind of like branch off. Like you just can't buy spend $10,000 on a Rolex unless you're really well off just to make a video. You know, it's going to take years and years, if it ever happens, to like bring a return on your investment. So just through like ad revenue. So I think you're gonna see a lot of YouTubers start to branch off into now not downplaying the quality of affordable watches because there's the opportunity to make money on affiliate links. So
in case you want to check it out. Up close, you'll see that the texture looks pretty much as good as it does in the product photos, and does look akin to a bunch of much more expensive textured dial watches.
I mean, I don't really think that's an amazing textured dial. It looks kind of like rough paper, right? So I don't think it's anything unique. I mean, there's so many watches that I think prettier and more unique dials than this, but I do like the color as the kind of baby blue, and you folks who've been watching me for a while know I definitely dig that, but you know, nothing so far really screams to me like, oh my God, this watch is just unbelievable. And he's kind of, you know, I'm not saying he doesn't like the watch, but I just feel like he's kind of, I feel like a lot of times YouTubers tend to... Sorry, I'm trying to pop the chat out here, folks. Montrese just said, good to see you. What's up? What's up? I don't know. Sorry, folks. I don't know what happened here. The chat disappeared on this program I'm using, so I have to open it up on like a web browser. Hey, let me ask you this, Montrese. Can you see the chat on this? Like, are you able to see it like on the screen, kind of in the upper right-hand corner? Anyway, let's continue on. We'll let him...
It's not as three-dimensional as some other dials I've covered before, so...
Yeah, see, I think that right there, that San Martin, I think is a more unique dial. That is subjective, of course, but I'll take that San Martin over that for sure.
Which is the San Martin desert dial watches, but the shallow ridges and bumps still provide a pretty magical effect that transforms as you move the watch around. When you look at it up close, it becomes even more remarkable. How did Citizen make something that seems so complex for a watch at this price? I remember...
I have to call bullshit on this. Like, how could you... To me, this looks like somebody took oil-based paint and like just like splattered it back and forth, right? I mean, okay, cool, guys. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, you can see the chat. Perfect. Yeah, so this dial, I mean, I'm not knocking it, right? But I don't think it's as amazing as he's making it out to be here. But again, that is to each their own, that is subjective.
I remember saying the same about the Ciosa Small Seconds too, which was even cheaper. At this point, it seems like Citizen is seizing the crown from Seiko as the king of lower cost watch dials. Among
these guys just say things like, how are they seizing the crown from Seiko? Like, they just like plant these seeds of like doubt along the way. Like, nobody's seizing the crown. First of all, Seiko doesn't even have the crown. There's so many amazing affordable watches that are much better. Let me say, maybe not much better is the word, but just as nice as Seiko for like a third the cost. You know, Steel Dive, Tactical Frog, Invicta. So, I mean, this is not... Nobody's stealing any crowns here.
The big boys, at least. Especially given the ballooning cost of newer Seiko releases. It looks premium, the printing of the text is serviceable, and the markers and hands are relatively clean too. Surrounding this inner area is a set of engraved rings that form the minute track. Some of the other variants use this section to add a second colour, which I think is an improvement over the single-tone blue version here. Perhaps it's the illusion of a smaller dial size or the dark eyeliner effect that frames everything up.
See, that's just funny how, just, again, I've mentioned many times, you know, when I do a video review, like, I'll reach out to Dartmouth and say, hey, I want this watch. Like, sometimes I'll never even notice a watch. Like, this watch in this color does nothing for me. But just having that baby blue, that ice blue face, it really makes the watch. So sometimes just a different change in color makes all the difference.
Up properly, I can't be sure. I just know that I lean more towards those two-tone versions. That said, Citizen has done a great job choosing these colors overall, which each brings something different to the set.
Great job choosing the colors. Like, this is pretty basic. Blue, green, white, yellow, and baby blue. Like, there's no good job here. Like, this is the standard colors you find amongst thousands of brands, right? I mean, come on.
While it's hard to
it's like they don't know what to say when they're making
criticize the dial, really. If I had to be picky, I do think it looks a little cluttered and bottom-heavy, given the imbalanced placement of the sub-dial and...
I mean, that's totally opinion. This is a pretty clean dial. I mean, I just don't know how one can review, like, a chronograph. Chronograph is a busy dial. Like, this is a pretty clean dial. Yeah, I don't know.
Lower text. As far as automatics go, in the flesh, I think the more symmetrical Ciosa Small Seconds...
See, I'm more of a fan of that. I don't know what you'd call that. I always screw up the name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I prefer the one on the right to this here. Not necessarily that color, but that dial technique. I feel like the other one just looks like kind of like a linen paper or something like that. They're both nice watches, don't get me wrong, and they're both, again, a little different, but I mean, they're both nice.
Is the better looking of the two, though it is a close contest, no doubt. Despite the material differences, the case shape is also quite similar, albeit the
And again, I want to say this is to me, this is kind of they're kind of copying a Royal Oak, right? So why are we not mentioning that? Like, this is leaning that way. They did their own thing on it, I get it, but I don't know, homage or not homage? What do you guys think?
new Forza has an even more angular appearance than the Ciosa, with squared off sides and a more standard 3 o'clock crown. The level of finishing on the case is good for a titanium watch
Kind of like they copied Spinnaker.
at this price, and is more than adequate not to cheapen the watch's appearance. Though the polishing, I wouldn't say, is quite on par with offerings from the Casio Oceanus series and Swiss Watch Company. Like some
No, the polishing's on par with everything. There's no. I mean, these guys they make things up as they go. When making that statement, I'd like him to put a Rolex, put an Omega, put a Seiko, and compare the polishing. There's different polishing techniques. There's brushed. There's polished. Those are really your matte finish, right? But mainly that's it. So when you look at a watch like this, they act like some watches have this polishing that's just completely, rough and just they couldn't get it right. I mean, this looks like anything else out there.
in the Casio Oceanus models, you'll notice that this Citizen has fixed integrated end links, which slot nicely into the bracelet, but simultaneously will heavily limit your strap choices. Unfortunately,
yeah, for sure, I agree with him on that. Yeah, you're not going to be able to just find straps that just, standard 20, 22 millimeter straps. So, yeah, it is kind of proprietary. I'm sure you can find stuff that'll fit this, but it does limit your strap choice. But why would you want to change it up? But again, that's just me.
Unfortunately, just like with the earlier titanium Citizens, the bracelet isn't a perfect match to the case. It has a blasted matte finish all over.
I don't understand what he's saying, that the bracelet is not a perfect match to the case. He didn't elaborate as to what he means by that at all.
Which works nicely with the flanks of the watch, but doesn't follow on from the vertically brushed.
Kind of passed right over that milled that stamped clasp too. That was really unfinished. Again, no big deal. Nobody sees it, but it's funny how if that was an Invicta or a watch brand they didn't really like, they would just be cutting that. They would not have just glazed over that, right?
Upper sections of the watch whatsoever. It just stops as soon as you hit the bracelet. The overall tone of the metal is the same, so this deficiency isn't nearly as obvious as with the previous titanium Citizen I looked at. But I'm surprised more reviewers aren't mentioning this, as you will notice it after a while. The bracelet links themselves are fine. They're all titanium, so they're nice and lightweight, just like the watch. Though I'm unsure if they're the same material as the case itself. I guess we'll test that later. They also have the same
Okay, his test isn't going to determine that, but at least I don't think it will.
polished lip as the lugs on the main housing, which
And titanium, let me just mention this too. Titanium, I find that whether it's hard, it is, I believe it's harder, it's stronger. I shouldn't say harder. I don't know if it's harder than stainless steel, than 316 stainless steel. But it is, I think it has a higher tensile strength. And it's lighter weight. But I find with titanium, when you scratch it, because it has kind of a darker finish, just normal scuffs and scratches, you notice more. So, just something to think about.
which is nice to see, though they're a little neutered by the underwhelming clasp system. It may be a titanium clasp, which is great, but it's stamped, thin, and only gives you 2 micro adjustment holes to pick from. Superior clasps are available elsewhere, that's for sure. Personally, I have struggled to get the ideal fit with these, which is doubly a shame given that it's hard to change the strap. The same can be said of the movement. Inside is the Miyota 8213.
Fine movement.
An automatic movement, near identical to those found in many far lower cost watches.
That is true. That's the first, I think the real first truthful thing he said. If we're looking at a watch just based on the movement and then saying, it's got a Miyota 8, whatever he said, this can be found in other watches. Yeah, there's watch price points that are all over the place. That at the end of the day, this is kind of the point I always try to make when it comes to watches. Just because a watch costs $800, you might have a watch that costs $800 made of 316 stainless steel, sapphire crystal with this particular Miyota movement, and then find a one by Steel Dive with the exact same specifications for a fraction of the cost. So again, remember, price has nothing to do with quality.
The only difference here is that the 8213 enables the small seconds complication, whereas the comparable 8210 movement doesn't. The Miyota 8000 series isn't exactly great. They have noisy rotors, a low beat rate, which essentially means the second hand isn't as smooth as some other movements, and they also look very plain, even versions with this gold finish.
I mean, I don't see how it looks really plain. That looks like a pretty nice movement. I like that it's gold. You can, it looks different when you look at the case back. I mean, how How is like a Rolex or a Seiko movement, you know, an NH35 or an actual Seiko branded movement, one of their actual Seiko branded watches? How is that like? What is the expectation here? Generally, a movement's not going to be, you know, customized or highly decorated in a watch at this price point. And even when you pop the back on like a Rolex watch, it's not that much different, right? I mean, looks a little different, but it always comes down to subjective. One might say, oh, this one's gold, I like it more. So I just don't, not really.
It's got a decent advertised accuracy of plus minus 20 seconds a day.
As far as what you said about the noisy movement, yeah, the Miyotas tend to be noisier. That rotor just kind of spins around. But, I mean, who's putting their ear to their watch? Like, granted, you can, like, if it's spinning and you kind of stop, and it might just keep spinning, like if you moved a certain way, like you'll hear it kind of whipping around in there, but like, who cares, you know?
But overall,
I guess maybe if you work in a library, but even then, it's like, oh, I hear something. It's like, what?
It's nothing to write home about. Thankfully, water resistance is good at 10 bar, so the movement likely won't be getting wet anytime soon. And as for scratches, well, it does have a piece of sapphire atop, which is the best crystal type when it comes to scratch resistance. Overall, it's definitely the optimal choice for this watch, and it looks good on the spec sheet for sure, but it also...
Yeah, sapphire is the best, I've said this many times, but remember, and this is referencing the test that Ben did himself, like on different watch crystals. Just because sapphire is the best, it doesn't mean the other sapphires aren't amazing as well. Maybe not as scratch resistant, but they're still very scratch resistant.
Also has a con that, yet again, reviewers seem to be skimming over with this one. Like some lower end Casios, this Citizen Sapphire is far from the clearest I've come across. It's got a noticeable cloudiness to it, which does hamper the visibility and punchiness of the dial at a...
Wait, maybe he can see this in person. I'm not seeing anything here. Looks pretty clear to me. I don't know.
Range of angles. It's also subpar at dealing with reflections, which is a real shame given the swanky surface that sits beneath. I mean, why?
Well, maybe it probably doesn't have an anti-reflective coating on it. So it's like, I mean, how? I just don't understand these guys. Like, if you're getting reflection off your watch, all you have to do to change that is just change the angle. So it's like they make a big deal about these little things. It's just, I guess it's just because they don't have nothing else to say. It's part of like their spiel, but it's not something to really worry about.
Why would you want to hide that surface? It looks awesome. Citizen also cut costs in the loom department, which again is just being overlooked. I know loom isn't everything, but look at this. It's so poor, it might as well not exist. Again, here's proof that a good spec sheet doesn't always carry over to real life. As for the fit, it's okay.
Yeah, the loom sucks. It looks like it sucks, but you know, who cares? But I mean, I guess it would be good to know if you're buying a watch based on loom. You know, it's always good to, you know, that's the thing about our society now. Everybody buys things online, myself included. But if you're going to buy something, it's always good, especially with Citizen. Like, you might find this in a brick and mortar store, and it might be good to go in there with a UV light and check out the loom. But I don't know. I don't really think this is a watch you should really be too concerned with the loom on it. You buy it because you like the way it looks. It's a beautiful looking watch, you know, but there's lots of other choices out there besides this.
In many ways, it falls victim to the same challenge as other integrated bracelet watches. It's got a bolt straight profile, as you can see here, meaning that you're all but guaranteed to have those gaps under the lugs, especially if you've got small wrists like me. The Citizen website...
Well, if you have small wrists, tighten it up. Like, granted, he did mention there's only 2 levels of micro adjustment, so maybe he can't get that perfect fit, but it's like these guys just really worry about things that aren't too important. But that is subjective. Maybe it really bothers him, but it wouldn't bother me.
It says this watch is 41mm, but I measured it up as about 40.5 with a 47.3mm lug to lug and an 11.5mm thickness. I've always preferred more conforming curved case shapes, but I have to say the baked-in lug design isn't as much of a problem as I anticipated, as the bracelet can tilt downwards at a steeper angle than the rival Tissot PRX. And on
Man, these guys must have really sensitive wrists. I just don't really get that. Like, I see a watch I like, you know, and I just put it on my wrist and wear it. I'm not like, ooh, I'm not like nitpicking the comfort. So I don't know, man. Imagine this guy wearing like a 70mm Invicta. I'd like to see him do that, actually. See what he has to say.
On that subject, I do just generally prefer this watch in most regards, at least to the Quartz PRX, which is the most comparably priced one. Personally, I think it's still a little too large for most people. I've seen a huge...
That's not true at all. Like, that's just a false statement. The watch is not large for most people. It may be large for him, but depending on what you like to wear, that statement is meaningless. This watch should be totally fine on my wrist. The only thing that I can really say about size is like if it's a 38 millimeter watch, I'm probably not. It's not my go-to size, right? It's a little small for what I like. I don't think there's really any rules when it comes to watch sizes and what you want to wear. If you like it, it doesn't bother you, then wear it.
Huge range of wrist shots from buyers and reviewers, and in most instances, I just get the gut feeling that the watch looks a bit too big. Unfortunately, it's the same fate shared by the CA4610-85Z.
And I just want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with him not liking watches, but I don't like when guys like this make statements, and maybe they just don't realize they're doing it, but when they're like, it's just too big. No, it's not too big. Just state that it's too big for you personally, right? It's not too big. It's not too small. It's ultimately subjective, and each person's going to decide what they like.
Also known as the Zenshin Chrono, or the Forza Chrono. What gives with that naming? Indeed, this one looked even better in the online images, with styling somewhat akin to the Tissot PRX chronograph, but with a different movement, case material, and price tag. The three colours this one ships in all have the trendy high contrast setup with dark subdials and that overall lighter dial tone. The sad part is, it's 42mm.
And how do you just glaze right over the fact, like, he's like earlier, it's a busy dial on the blue one, but then he went to a watch that's even busier, in my opinion. He didn't say anything about it.
In fact, my calipers had this at 42.5, which will inherently be hugely restrictive. At present, there's no smaller version of this one available, meaning unless you're a bodybuilder or competitive eater, or specifically just want a big watch for your arm, the Chrono likely won't fit on your shopping list even.
It's so funny, like, these guys are so, like, they're so, like, passive-aggressive. Like, they have to, like, oh, if you're a bodybuilder, like, dude, this is not a big watch. I mean, I don't know how big this guy is. Like, I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'8", about 180 pounds. Like, big, when somebody says big, it is subjective. Like, there's always somebody bigger than you. There's always somebody smaller than you for the most part, for most people. So it's like, you don't have to be a bodybuilder to wear a 41mm watch. Like, I can only say this guy is extremely weak. And actually, that's not even true. Like, this guy is not weak enough to not pull off a watch of this size. Like, I'm sure he's not weak. He's a grown man. A watch is super lightweight no matter what you get. So it's just making statements that just aren't really true.
It's a shame too, as it somehow implements the same dial texture as the automatic version, despite running off solar power. Indeed, hiding beneath this dial, or potentially in those translucent subdials, are solar receptive cells that turn light into battery
I do totally dig the Citizen, like the one that James Perez got me. Thank you, my boy. Pretty cool that it has solar panels built into the subdials. And what I really like about it is that you don't even notice that they're there. Like, if somebody had pointed out to you, you might not even know that. I guarantee you wouldn't know. It doesn't look like solar panels. And I think it's a really great technology in watches. That's one reason I really do like Seiko. I did it again. Citizen watches. I think if I was going to buy a Citizen and that baby blue color was available with the solar panels, I would definitely choose that one over that. I just think it's a really cool feature of the watch.
Power. Eco Drive has been a great innovation since it was introduced decades ago, but now Citizen seems to have mastered the way they implement this tech to the extent where it no longer affects the visuals whatsoever. On that topic,
yeah, I agree with them on that. I definitely agree with them. Like, you would not know that that's a solar panel, 3 solar panels on there.
Something I need to point out with this model in particular. On the website, it's listed as salmon, yet the product images almost give the impression that this watch is more of a golden brown tone.
To me, it's more like a cork color.
In person, though, the hue is substantially different. Oddly, it's much more accurate to its namesake, an orange pink that is much more akin to a real salmon fillet. I have to say, though, I
never mind.
Just don't really like it in person. It's not awful, but it doesn't combine with the darker accents like the
I've never seen any salmon look like that, but
subdials and chaptering, nearly as well as the creamer appearance shown in the product shots. Absolutely, I'd say the white dial is going to be the best of the 3, avoiding the color clashes that mar the others.
Nah, I don't know. White dial, yeah, they're all nice, but I mean, if you want something to be kind of unique, like white dial's not really it. I mean, so it looks like anything else out there.
This one does have other redeeming qualities. The hands and markers are again clean and neat. The subdials are deeply set with reflective chamfers to highlight each of them. The sweep of this chronograph hand is also a nice to have, considering this is usually only a trait of mechanical or mecha quartz timepieces. Unfortunately, the Chrono is even bulkier than the Auto. It's a shade under 12mm thick, but in every other aspect it's virtually identical. Same water resistance, bracelet, crystal, and the same case style as the automatic. So yeah, it's a good option if you want a big white chronograph watch, but what if you don't? What if you want something less niche? Well, that's where we get to the final contender, the overlooked one, the three-hander. This one is the AW013085X. I've also now seen people referring to this one as Citizen Core. What's going on with the naming? Either way, this is the one I'm most excited about for some fairly obvious reasons. Primarily, it's the size. This is the smallest of the set with a 39.5mm width and only a 10mm thickness. The lug-to-lug is also just 46.3mm in.
I mean, we're talking a millimeter in different. I think he said the other one was 40.5. Like, I mean, you can't even notice a millimeter. I just don't buy like a lot of what these guys are saying. This really just comes down to like the visual appearance of a watch. Like, I get it. And that's okay, but
including the baked-in end links. It's not exactly small, but I do think it's way better proportioned than the other two. And the Eco Drive movement is also far lighter than the automatic, giving you a truly featherweight final result. This thing vanishes on wrist. You will forget you've got it on. It's also
I mean, I don't really even realize I'm wearing any watch for that matter, so I don't know.
less cluttered than the automatic, with a sleeker, more symmetrical dial that's only interrupted by the oversized day-date window.
Yeah, it's less cluttered by one little sub-dial. Like, these guys just make a mountain out of everything. It's just crazy.
Let's be real, that bit, it could have been slashed down or cut completely. Regardless, I think it's the best looking of the three, and
what these guys really need is just a watch with, like, just nothing, no movement at all. Just clear right through the skin, be like, yeah. You know, like, totally sterile. Like, nothing in it. Yeah, then they'd probably be happy.
Probably the one to get for most people. It's also $100 less than the automatic, as well as the most practical, given all the solar stuff. Obviously, price is subject to change. My main question is this one running off magic? I mean, the dial here looks exactly the same as the automatic one, and it doesn't even have the panel-like subdials from the chronograph. So how exactly is such a detailed dial like this taking in light and then charging up a battery? It's truly extraordinary stuff.
Now that's interesting. I don't know if he's correct on that. Let me look that up here. I would actually be pretty surprised, actually a little shocked, that I may have learned something by Benny Boy here. That, let me just see, I'm on the Citizen website, and let me see if that's actually true or not. So let me find the one he's looking at here. Where is the one he's looking at here? There it is. All right, the three-hand, super titanium. Let me see what it says here. I feel like this is a quartz, and he's... Wow, okay, so that's pretty cool, actually. So that is still a solar watch, and what they say here is Eco Drive Ring Solar. I think what they mean is, I hope you guys can see my mouse cursor here, is I'm going to go right over here, this ring around the outer edge. I believe that to be like the solar panel, unless they've integrated something into the sides here. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm talking about here, but you have the edge of the dial, and then of course you have the actual inside. Somebody correct me here. What is that called? The inside edge. I always call it like the dish section here, but maybe they put a panel on the inside. But I'm pretty sure that the solar panel on this is on the outer ring, and to me, that's actually a very unique, innovative design. Even though having the solar panels on the subdials, it kind of blends into the watch. I think this is pretty cool that they have a watch that really typically looks like your traditional quartz watch. And I never would have thought that that's actually the solar panel around the ring. Very cool. Very cool. I have a little more respect for this watch. You know, again, I like the watch. I would like to see it in that baby blue in this color. I'm not really a fan of of this particular color, but pretty innovative.
Remember when solar watches used to look like this? Man, how things have changed. The pattern seems to be the same on each unit, as this model's dial imperfections match those in the stock images, so yours should look just like this if you get one. This green version in particular is a sweetie. Of course, this model shares the same basic pros and cons as the other two, and despite the more compact...
Other than being tiny, it's a little tiny watch, but actually it's not. It's a smaller watch, but why they made it smaller is beyond me. I'm not sure if he's correct on the measurements, but, you know...
dimensions, it still retains some of that under lug space, meaning it can still slide around a bit. It's also the most vanilla of the three, I'd say, especially...
It's watch for sure. And I think that some folks, this is kind of where I talk about like buy what makes you happy. There are folks out there, even though I'm not one to give a shit about what people think of me wearing what, right? I just wear what I want and what makes me happy. There are going to be the folks out there who, won't buy an Invicta or won't buy a specific brand because they're like Filippo Loretti or like Movement, just because of the negative publicity a lot of these brands have gotten from YouTubers. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, and like chat boards and stuff. And so, some folks may be hesitant to be like, oh, I like the Invicta, great value, or and I always say Invicta because that's the one that gets the brunt of the abuse, but let's just, for the hell of it, just say a Fossil watch, right? Maybe somebody really cares about what people think of them, and you shouldn't, but, again, to each their own. Citizen might be a more respected brand name to a lot of the watch snobs. And so maybe if you're a person that cares about that, I think this is a nice watch. Always buy what makes you happy, but I think this is pretty cool. I would like to see other brands integrate kind of this solar technique into their watches. Very, very cool.
Combined with the standard looking markers and hands that are used across the range. And that only leaves us with the headline feature. The one that Citizen likes to ram down your throat in virtually.
Whoa, dude, he was straight fisting that.
Every marketing email.
Super Titanium!
Now, we've had some trouble with this material in the past, or should I say Citizen's way of marketing it.
Super Titanium. Let's see, what other brand does that? 904, ring a bell, right? So, yeah, so Titanium is probably just a Titanium watch. They might do something that's kind of proprietary. Maybe he'll mention that where they call it Super Titanium. But just like Invicta, I'll pick on Invicta, Flame Fusion Crystal. It's their own technique for crystal. At the end of the day, Invicta can just throw like a K1 on, or they can throw on Sapphire and, be even more scratch resistant on the Sapphire version. So Flame Fusion is kind of like their own thing that they market. It's still, I can't tell you exactly how it's done or how it's made. There is supposedly an advantage to it, but again, brands are always trying to market something to make it sound like it's different, right? And so ultimately, this is a titanium watch. Is the super part of it really going to make a real world difference? Probably not, but maybe you'll talk about that.
On their website, they like to yell about how super titanium is 40% lighter and 5 times harder than stainless steel. Yet in all...
Well, it's not what it says. It's 5 times more scratch resistant than stainless steel. And again, that depends on the stainless steel. So that's kind of I'd like to see them actually reference that with what watches are made of. 316. Now maybe they don't have to say that because maybe that's what they mean, but I think it's a little suspect to just state stainless steel because there are different grades and different types of stainless.
In our Mohs Hardness scratch test video that we did a while back, we found it didn't perform 5 times better than steel. In fact, it didn't perform better full stop. If anything, it was marginally worse. The Super Titanium branded watch we scratched, advertised as such by Citizen on their own site, scratched just like a completely untreated titanium Loris watch that was a fraction of the price. As a result, I assume that Super...
I feel like there's a better spot he could have like scratched the watch and on the side. But hey, they're his watches, right? Yeah. So again, he's proving my point here. Remember, putting super in front of something doesn't make it better.
Super Titanium was yet another bogus marketing invention to ramp up prices. Nevertheless, multiple commenters disagreed. They said there were different versions of Super Titanium available with differing levels of performance, and that my watch was just bottom tier. The thing is...
Yeah, see, you can't even you even get it with like, I'm not gonna say like Citizen snobs, but you get it with anything. Like now, I mean, he clearly did it. I think that's a pretty solid test. But suddenly now there's different tiers, which I don't think there's any documentation that states that Citizen has Super Titanium version 1 through 5, right? So it's just somebody defending, their watch. I tend to agree with Ben on this.
As an English speaker, you'd never know this when buying. All Super Titanium watches on non-Japanese sites are just listed as Super Titanium across the board. If these coating tiers do exist, you can't tell on the spec sheet. And Citizen's documentation about this material, well, is basically non-existent.
Right, because it probably doesn't exist.
The English Super Titanium information page makes no mention of any different performance tiers. Indeed, it turns out you have to head to the Japanese version of their website, navigate to this specific page, and then translate everything as you scroll with a tool like Google Lens to learn about these covert differences. There's no official equivalent of this detailed page outside of Japan. No documentation even ships with the watches. Now, some citizens do have terminology on the case rear, so if you're already in the know about this, it could help a bit. But if you're not, like 99.9% of us, you'd have no clue. And it's not like this web page is easy to find either. I couldn't find any easy route to it on the Citizen Japan
I mean, I don't know why it matters. Like, don't take a scratch kit and try to scratch your watch, right?
site, and I only hunted it down after specifically searching for it in Google. The Citizen watch we previously scratched just said base titanium on the back, which, according to commenters, meant it was bottom tier or had no coating at all and barely qualified as super titanium despite being advertised as that. Apparently, I explicitly needed to look for the word Duratect, which is the fancy name for the high-end treatment or coating. Well, these Forza watches do say Duratect on the back. I mean, it doesn't say which version of Duratect this is. This Japanese webpage lists.
Imagine if Invicta did that. Like, seriously, they would be crucified for that, right? They'd be like, Invicta's manipulating people. Like,
multiple different methods and up to 10 different types of this Duratect treatment, none of which are simply called Duratect, at least according to that page.
I think Duratec is probably like a branded, it's like Oyster Steel, you know what I mean? It's like a branded name for what, because really when I look at this, like when I see DLC is diamond-like coating, there's many brands using that. So I feel like brands like this will just say, oh, well, ours is Duratec diamond-like coating. It's really just the same shit, right?
I'm assuming it's the titanium carbide version, given the watch is titanium and has been used on other similarly priced ranges before, but I can't be sure. It then gets even more bizarre, because with some leeway for mistranslation, it says at the top of the page, titanium with Duratect is super titanium. Well, the last watch I bought was titanium.
It's like they keep making like marketing additions to their website and like forgetting about the other ones they've done.
And was marketed as super titanium by Citizen. So that means that must have been Duratect too, right? Even though it lacked the branding on the case back. So how do these new Duratect watches actually fare then? Well, it turns out exactly the same as last time. My Mohs scratch kit gave marks at level 4, light to medium scratches at level 5,
At least he's doing it on the back.
and deep scratches at level 6. I took on feedback from the last test video and used a slightly.
And remember, in the real world, like, you're not, like, this is not how you're gonna wear your watch, right? You're not gonna, like, be rubbing it up against a scratch pointer, you know? So, I appreciate, like, what he's doing here, but this is really kind of meaningless for the real world use. No matter what you wear, you're gonna scratch it. So just kind of understand that.
better technique this time.
Although on the crystal, you probably won't, no matter what you get. It just depends on how abusive you are to your watches, but I've never scratched it anymore.
But I still got identical results. I got the same score on both the bracelet and the main housing, by the way. For context, this is slightly worse performance than 304, 316L, and 904L steel, the three main steel types used in watchmaking. It's also comparable to that same untreated Loris titanium watch as well.
I do like that he's, you know, at least doing this here. We have 316L, resin, silver plastic. So it's kind of cool that he's, I was never even aware of those different names. I've heard of 904, 316, of course, 304. I don't know if a lot of companies use 304. Generally, what you're going to find in watches is 316.
So in this instance, the Duratect wording doesn't seem to make a shred of difference. This whole mess got me thinking, is this even legal? To lead with such umbrella claims about the hardness and scratch resistance, when many of the products sold under this super titanium moniker.
You know, though, I mean, I just commented on an Instagram post the other day. A guy put on there that 904 stainless was like 5 times the tensile strength of 316. It's totally not true. It's like 10 to 20%. So, you know, again, people say whatever they want, and then, you know, whether or not somebody's going to come after them for it, you know, is I don't know. Probably not. Probably nobody's going to make an issue of it.
Don't come close to those performance claims. Well, I've looked at the ASA website, the advertising regulator here in the UK, as well as the government's legislation site, and I'd be surprised if Citizen weren't breaking multiple laws by omitting this key information and selling lower tier products under the same banner with identical performance claims. I'm not saying that they are breaking these laws, just that they could be, and if they were, they'd be pretty scummy, nefarious or accidental.
Now, if it was Invicta, we would make up our mind immediately, but again, guys are just giving slack to brands they like, you know, cutting them slack.
Legal or not, this mess needs clearing up, especially because they just don't need to be doing this. They've got bangers without all this misleading nonsense.
Well, welcome to the world of marketing. You know, when companies are spending $8 million for a Super Bowl video, you know, it's like, come on now. I mean, that's just the world we live. There's lots of brands that are doing things like this. I don't know. At the end of the day, no matter what product you buy, you know, there's always going to be little differences. But I can kind of like compare this to, let's say, car audio, right? Subwoofers. You know, Sony came out with that a while back. That, you know, when you have, I don't know, actually, I shouldn't say, who's the like one of the first ones to come out? Polypropylene cones, right? And so there was a claim that this is better than aluminum, or then you have aluminum cones are better than this, and paper cones sound more natural. At the end of the day, they all sound pretty good if they're in the right box. And, you know, ultimately, you know, I don't mean to make this about car audio, but really, realistically, brands are always trying to come out, no matter what the product is, with new ways of marketing products that kind of already exist, right? And coatings and different, no matter what it is, it's like what was one that I saw recently that was like, I think it had to do with like the resolution. It was like 4K enhanced resolution. It was really just 4K resolution. So, I mean, you just have to kind of understand that, be a smart shopper, and ultimately, like, you know, this is kind of nitpicking. If you're going to buy a watch made of titanium, then understand no matter what somebody puts in front of titanium, it's probably just going to be titanium, right? Same thing with 316 stainless steel. If you have like a watch company being like, this is Duratec 316, like, it's just still 316.
The very highest end Duratec treatments do reach those heights, but if so, the hardness claim should be attached only to those models, not the full range. This is highly misleading. If you're just
This is like, you know, the drug industry does this all the time. And what we see a lot of times now is like all these drug companies, these supplement companies making these claims. Like, what is Prevagen? You know, what does it come from? Like, I think like an octopus or something like that. You have the guy on TV saying, how he's just, his life changed. His mind got better. He could remember everything. It's like bullshit, dude. That's just like a marketing claim. Now, I think that anything that you buy that you might help you if you are suffering something, great. Consult your doctor. But, you know, like, what's the other one? For instance, what's the... Osteobiflex, right? That's a brand, but there's the cartilage in there, right? I take one supplement, right? I got to work out a lot. My shoulders hurt all the time. I can tell you right now, taking that pill and not taking that pill has no difference. So I just think there's a lot of like these studies done and these tests where companies can kind of get away with saying things that aren't necessarily 100% true. There might be like a teeny bit of factual information in some kind of study they did where they might have showed a slight increase in like whatever they were testing for, but at the end of the day, like, it's not going to make any real world difference. So just kind of be a smart shopper and just understand somebody's trying to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge, right?
a regular buyer, or heck,
Stay
even a
cool,
watch
you know?
nerd, and you see these online claims, buy the watch, take it home, and find that it scratches just the same as everything else, you're going to be
Yeah, you're going to buy the watch. So this is the process. This is where this guy's kind of detached. You're going to look online, fall in love with a watch, get it, be super happy about the fact it's Duratec or whatever the name, whatever he just said the titanium is. Get it home, and then let's go take your scratch kit and scratch the shit out of it. Nobody's going to do that. People are just going to buy their watch and wear it. And if Duratec does provide a slight element of scratch resistance, maybe since it has done some kind of testing where maybe there's different levels between each scratch test. Like if he's trying to scratch it with a number 6, then he jumps to a number 7, you know, maybe they tested it at a 6.1, and maybe, you know, another standard type of titanium scratched at 6. They may not necessarily be lying, but the real world advantage just might not be noticeable at all.
pissed, because I know I am. Now, I wouldn't say
Why would you be pissed? Like, you're purposely trying to scratch your watch. Like, I mean, this is
these
ridiculous.
findings ruin the value of the Forza range or anything. They're still good watches with great dials, and they are reasonably priced. If the 3-hander fitted me, I'd probably keep it. It's just that super titanium shouldn't
Probably keep it. Where's it going? You gonna return it after scratching it?
automatically be seen as this god-tier flagship feature or put on such a pedestal by reviewers when most watches with this branding scratch just as badly as industry standard materials or even just plain titanium.
Well, that's because a lot of YouTubers are trying to, you know, we're all affiliates, right, for the most part. I shouldn't say all. A lot of us are affiliate links. If you find value, my nicest way of wording it is if I do a video, I'll never tell you that, like, this is Flame Fusion, so you're never going to scratch this. It's way more... I'm never going to make huge claims like that, right? Ultimately, you know, a lot of what I do in reviewing really comes down to liking something based on subjective reasons, right? You like this watch because you are going to enjoy wearing it. You like the way it looks, you know? And if you come to my channel and I maybe show you an angle of the watch or tell you my experience of the watch and you said, hey, you know what, that kind of made me want to buy it, and you found value in that, then by all means, hook me up with a commission, right? But I mean, I think a lot of guys just, they really try to oversell you on these things that companies state, just like I feel with luxury brands. All these guys try to oversell you on the quality you're going to get. And sure, absolutely, there's always going to be little quality differences, but they're little quality differences.
Super Titanium does advertise some other niche advantages too, but I think scratches are the
Gentle on the skin, subjective.
most common thing
Beauty that never corrodes. Depends on what you're doing with it.
you'll likely run into. I'm not going to be leaving this thing underwater for months, am I? Citizen needs to be
Correct. Exactly. I'm glad he said that. You're not going to leave the watch underwater for months. And this is, but remember, I hope that he remembers that when we start talking about 904 stainless steel, because no matter what, salt water is very corrosive. So it does not matter what alloy you have. Again, for you folks who know more than me, you know, maybe bronze or brass is better, right? But you know, if that's the case, why don't we see more brass watches, right? So again, it's not really something that most people are going to be concerned with. I joke, my old thing I always say, unless you're going to become a mermaid and live in the ocean, it's all kind of meaningless.
way more transparent with their tiering, naming, and marketing. Content creators should also stop automatically hyping up Super Titanium and
I agree, Ben. You should really stop overhyping things like 904.
taking the extreme
And let me just be clear. I don't know of a video where Ben did that, but I wouldn't doubt it if he's going to review. A lot of watch reviewers will say how superior 904 is to 316. So let's kind of remember that.
marketing
Not just directed at Ben.
claims at face value without doing any basic testing or even looking up tests like the ones we've done.
And I agree, but I don't really. I agree he's right in doing basic testing, but him using a scratch kit that doesn't have, you know, a lot of increments in it is not really a fair way to test this particular alloy. This is a very rough, very, you know, this is a very rough test, right? And if you're going to use a scratch test kit to scratch something, remember, if that kit might be perfect for things like glass, right? Or things that are already pretty hard to scratch. If you're going to use a scratch kit to try to scratch something that's relatively soft, like any alloy, you know, you're going to be disappointed, because I'm sure he could take the scratch kit and test 316 and test, you know, 904 and test just, you know, a gold watch, right? And so I'm not saying there aren't special coatings. You know, when we look at firearms, there's different type of coatings. There's, you know, what's one that's Cerakote is supposed to be very good, right? And I have a Cerakote firearm, but, you know, what is the main reason for, I guess, having a watch that's, you know, harder? It would be scratching on the cuff, but I don't really think there's anything they could put on a watch that you're not going to scratch it. What's like I find interesting is like one of my black Invicta watches, mirror polished black coating. I don't know, they don't give any kind of proprietary name or anything like that, but you would think that would be scratched to shit, and I don't even have a scratch on it. Mirror polished black, so whatever they use is definitely pretty hard, and I think that ceramic is probably going to be, you know, one of the best, something like Rado, but to purposely try to scratch it, you know, I'd like to know, you know, just doing normal stuff, you know, maybe he should put on this watch and go on a glass desk and kind of move his arm around, or go on a couple different desks, put it on surfaces that you're mainly going to be, I guess, subjecting the watch to, not like a scratch kit, you know, because nobody's doing that. Like, that's not a real world test.
Yeah, it turns out that Super Titanium usually isn't so super. At least other companies like Casio clearly tell you when their watches use titanium carbide without all this extra.
Well, yeah, but where's the test for the titanium carbide? Like, we're already giving credit to this company, Casio. We all know, we all heard we're giving credit to Casio. I'm not knocking Casio; it's a great company, but you know, did he test the titanium carbide? You know, I venture to believe that if he tested titanium carbide and subjected to the same test, he's probably gonna be disappointed as well.
Fuss or jargon, and micro brands like RZE just have one coating that works excellently across the board. In fact, you can check out the full scratch
I don't know, they both look like they were scratched there, so...
test, including the RZE, on screen now. The Zenshin Forzas are also linked in the video description if you do.
So cool, so very nice looking watch. Let's close this out. Very nice looking watch. I think, you know, That's one of the nicest Citizens I've seen. I really like the blue dial, the baby blue. I would go with the automatic over the solar just because I like the dial color. And I think a lot of times that's when a watch kind of calls to us. We'll see, I've seen watches like for instance, just Spinnaker, for instance. There's watches, when I reach out to Spinnaker and say, hey, send me this for review, you know, I'll have looked at that watch dozens of times, and all of a sudden they'll come out with a new color variation, and I'm like, ooh, that's the one, I gotta have it. And so I think a lot of times that makes a huge difference in whether you like a watch or not. But at the end of the day, buy what makes you happy, and don't listen to a lot of, remember, all these companies, for the most part, have marketing claims, and maybe those claims are valid under certain conditions. You won't find that as much if you go with brands or like these AliExpress brands. You know, Pagani Design isn't going to do that. You know, I think as a company becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, they're trying to raise the price of their products. And in order to raise the price, you have to kind of give somebody a perception of some kind of extra value. Otherwise, why are they going to spend the money for it? Unless they're delusional and they say, oh, well, Rolex is just better, so I'm going to spend 10 grand for it, right? So again, the companies are always going to do this, and I think just kind of a little slack. Be a smart shopper. Buy what ultimately you like cosmetic. It makes you happy. Stick to those check boxes. You know, if you like 904, great, but don't think you're going to get any real-world advantage over 316. If you like a gold watch, buy a gold watch. If you want an automatic over quartz, I think keeping watch collecting and watch purchasing into that basic check boxes, as I call them, you know, I think quartz or automatic, that's a big one. You know, which is your preference, right? I always say my dad prefers quartz over automatic because he doesn't have to worry about setting the time. Me, I prefer automatic. They're both fantastic, right? They're just different. You know, Flame Fusion Sapphire, I could care less on what the crystal is, to be honest with you. If I have to see a watch I really like and it just says acrylic, not acrylic, but just like glass or mineral, I don't even give it 2 seconds thought. I'm like, great, like the watch. Because I know at the end of the day, you're not really going to scratch any of these. At least I haven't. So we buy things based on our own experiences, and I don't really see the point in worrying about it. Ultimately, the biggest things in buying a watch is, number one, do you like it? Number two, again, you know, what's it made out of? 316, you're good to go. I personally, if I was spending money on a watch, right, and I'm not saying getting it for review, but actually buying a watch, if I see that it's not 316, I'm probably going to really think twice about buying it. But the thing is, most watches are 316, so you really don't have to worry too much about that when you're buying you know, decent quality watches from reputable names. Fashion watches, for the most part. But you do have to, you know, look at each watch. I don't want to just say, oh, Invicta uses 316, so every Invicta uses 316. There are some watches using just some basic alloy that are maybe gold-plated in that, you know, just going to pick a price, $40 price range. They may not be 316 stainless steel. So just got to keep those check boxes in mind. Give each watch a fair shake. And, oh, John D's back. Man, I'm done with the video, man. Where have you been? We had Lens Goes Deep, Montrese, a lot of the guys who've been here before. John came in late. So I will just answer John's question. Well, you don't want glass, that shatters. I don't know, man. I have plenty of glass watches that are like $20 mall specials I got when I was 18 or 19. No problems with them. So again, to John's comment, it does depend on what you're doing with it, but they don't just shatter like John says. They can all shatter no matter what you get. You know, naturally, yes, sapphire is going to be your most scratch resistant, but generally, in my experience, anything that's harder tends to shatter more. But I could be off on that, you know. So anyway, yeah, man, I know Fridays probably aren't a good day for me to do these things, but I wanted to throw it on here today. I got behind on videos and had some stuff come up, so it's just busy lately. But at least I wanted to do this one. In all honesty, today I didn't really do a lot of like research on YouTube, trying to figure out a video to kind of react to. I just saw this one pop up, and I was like, hey, Citizen Watch, that looks pretty cool. I think the title was what really made me do it, because they call it Grand Seiko Killer. I didn't really hear him mention anything in this video about how it kills the Grand Seiko. So total clickbait as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, Johnny said I've dropped the glass pocket watch and it shattered. Family heirloom. Yeah, man. I mean, if you drop any watch, like the potentials are to shatter. Just because sapphire doesn't mean you're not going to shatter it. So, you know, just keep that in mind, folks. Dropping a watch on the concrete, you hit it just right, you can shatter it. So anyway, but damn, man, sorry, John, I'm gonna roll out, man. I'll try to do these if you guys have like a particular day you prefer more. It seemed like last time we had a much better turnout. Naturally, it's after 5 now, depending on where you live, and depending on when you're watching this. Maybe that's a better time, but it's kind of late for me. I like to use kind of earlier in the day. So, no, man, you're not retarded, dude. Accidents happen. Like, I bashed many of my watches on brick walls. I remember one of my jobs had like a solid brick wall, and I'd always come around the corner and smash it. The Sea Hunter. And it's a big watch. Like, it's pretty easy to hit it on things. And I've never damaged anything. I've never dropped the watch, but I did, to your comment about shattering. This really sucks, too. I have a Geneve Elegante. This was, I'll give you a little story and then I'll cut out. This was a watch I got as a gift from my mom and dad. Came with the bracelet back in Ugleam days. Ugleam was a website. There's a lot of hip-hop jewelry. Fully iced out. They called them Swarovski crystals. I don't know if they were, but it's super cool. I still have it. And unfortunately, I wore the hell out of this watch. I beat the hell out of it. And it's missing a few stones. But again, the whole thing encrusted. It's held up really well. It was like $200 for the bracelet and the watch. And, I mean, I'll have to do a video on it one of these days. It's badass. I wanted to replace the battery in it. And, again, take it from me. If you want, like, he's like, John's like, I'm a retard. Well, then I'm not going to say that, but I'm stupid too, right? We all make mistakes. I went ahead and changed the battery and I had to get the case back on. So I took like an encyclopedia, put it down and put another one on top of it and pushed down. And I think I was a little off and I shattered the whole crystal on it. Now this, I don't know what crystal it was. It probably was just a mineral lens. It might even have been glass. But it definitely, I definitely ruined it. And, do I want to have it fixed? I don't know what it costs to have a new crystal put in it. Do I want to spend nobody works for $10 an hour, right? So do I want to spend $100? I had a ring sized. I mean, she took it down, gold ring, 10 karat, took like maybe 3 millimeters of gold out of it, sized it. It was like $80. So, it's a lot. Like, it's one thing to do that for a gold ring that is meaningful to you. Like, my dad gave it to me. And, but I don't know. It's just, do I want to do that with a really $100 watch? And realistically, it's not even 3/16 stainless steel. It's a really what we'll call a fashion watch, right? But it has a lot of bling, and I have a lot of good memories wearing it. Like, I remember the first time that I got that watch and showed it to like some guy that I knew. He's like, "Damn, man, hang that motherfucker out the window while driving, right? While rolling, because it just hits the light." And I just wish they still made that because it was a really nice quality watch. Quartz, not what I would consider like the best quality, but I don't know, I'll show you guys one of these days in a live stream. But anyway, folks, Easy Tony just said, hey man, gonna close it out here. I got more things to do. So if you did pop in, thanks for watching. If there's a better day that you folks like to do these videos, so I really do these for the people who kind of come back and watch me often. Let me know in the comment section. And you folks, I don't know if it's your weekends, but if it is your weekend, have a good weekend, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.